Nestled in the outskirts of Louisville, Kentucky, Waverly Hills Sanatorium stands as a monument to history and the supernatural. Its dark and complex past, with origins in the early 20th century tuberculosis epidemic, has become legendary among paranormal enthusiasts. With its massive, Gothic-style architecture and the thousands of deaths that took place there, Waverly Hills has been called one of the most haunted places in the world. Over the years, it has evolved from a place of hope and despair to a destination for ghost hunters and historians alike, each hoping to connect with its eerie past. In this journey, we'll uncover the history, architecture, haunting legends, paranormal experiences, and restoration efforts that continue to shape the legacy of Waverly Hills. The origins of Waverly Hills Sanatorium date back to a time when tuberculosis, or the White Plague, ravaged communities across the United States. Louisville, with its humid and river valley climate, was especially susceptible to the airborne disease. By the early 1900s, tuberculosis had spread rampantly, infecting thousands and taking lives at an alarming rate. In response to this crisis, the Jefferson County Board of Tuberculosis Hospitals sought to build a sanatorium on the outskirts of the city where patients could be isolated from the general population. In 1910, a small, two-story wooden structure was erected to accommodate around 40 to 50 tuberculosis patients. This original structure, however, quickly became inadequate as the number of patients grew. By 1924, plans were underway to replace it with a larger facility. 2 years later, in 1926, the Waverly Hills Sanatorium as we know it today was completed. This new, sprawling, 5-story, Gothic-style building could hold over 400 patients, representing one of the most modern medical facilities of its time. Its design, featuring open wards and extensive windows, was intended to maximize sunlight and airflow, two essential elements in the tuberculosis treatment theories of the era. For many patients, admission to Waverly Hills was a sentence to months, if not years, of grueling treatments and enforced isolation. Despite the sanatorium's best efforts, Waverly was often a place where patients came to die. Family members could only visit infrequently, and many patients were separated from loved ones, unable to communicate regularly due to quarantine protocols. Waverly Hills was unique in its approach to patient care. The staff strove to provide patients with not just medical treatment, but a sense of community. Patients were encouraged to socialize and form bonds with one another, often creating lasting friendships despite the harsh reality of their illness. However, the psychological toll of the disease, isolation, and treatment was significant. It's estimated that tens of thousands of people lost their lives within Waverly Hills walls during its years as a tuberculosis hospital, and each death added to the weight of grief and despair that seemed to permeate the sanatorium. Waverly Hills architecture is part of what lends it its ominous allure. The sprawling, 5-story structure was designed in a Gothic revival style, combining both beauty and functionality. It features long hallways with massive windows and open-air porches where patients could be exposed to fresh air and sunlight, believed to be among the most effective treatments for tuberculosis at the time. One of the most iconic and eerie features of Waverly Hills is the body chute or death tunnel. This 500-foot-long underground tunnel was built as a practical solution to a grim problem. With so many patients succumbing to the disease, the hospital wanted to avoid constantly transporting bodies through the main entrance, where living patients would witness them. Instead, they constructed a tunnel that led from the sanatorium down the hillside, where the deceased would be discreetly removed. This tunnel, steep and dark, was outfitted with a rail and a cart system to aid in the transportation of bodies. Today, it's one of the most paranormally active sites in the building, with many claiming it's filled with whispers, apparitions, and strange lights. And medical treatments for tuberculosis in the early 20th century were often experimental, brutal, and invasive. Sunlight therapy, also known as heliotherapy, was one of the most widely practiced forms of treatment. Patients would spend hours each day on the open-air porches, often in frigid winter conditions, in an effort to kill the bacteria with fresh air and sunlight. For patients with more advanced cases of tuberculosis, doctors employed more invasive procedures. One common operation was the thoracoplasty, where parts of a patient's ribs would be surgically removed to collapse a lung and allow it to rest, under the belief that this would prevent the disease from spreading. These treatments were risky and frequently resulted in death, with many of those lost becoming part of Waverly's haunting legend. The many lives lost in Waverly Hills Sanatorium are said to have left an indelible mark on the building, resulting in countless ghost stories and paranormal encounters. Reports of ghostly figures, eerie sounds, and supernatural phenomena have persisted for decades, attracting ghost hunters, paranormal enthusiasts, and skeptics alike. Some of the most famous ghostly inhabitants of Waverly Hills include the little girl on the third floor. One of the most famous apparitions at Waverly Hills is that of a young girl. Often called Mary, this spirit is frequently seen playing with a ball, and visitors report hearing the sound of it bouncing along the floor. Mary is said to be a playful presence, and some believe she was a child patient who passed away at the sanatorium. Room 502, the haunted nurses' quarters. Room 502 has gained infamy for being one of the most haunted locations in the building. According to legend, a nurse hanged herself in this room after discovering she was pregnant out of wedlock, an unthinkable scandal at the time. Another nurse is said to have mysteriously fallen to her death from the window of the same room. Visitors and investigators often report feelings of unease, seeing shadowy figures, and hearing unexplained voices in room 502. The Death Tunnel bodied chute. The Death Tunnel is notorious for its haunting activity. Paranormal investigators have recorded strange sounds, whispers, and unexplained cold spots here. Some visitors even claim to have seen full-bodied apparitions. Walking down the tunnel can be a nerve-wracking experience, with some describing it as a descent into darkness, where sadness and fear seem almost palpable.
In August of 2020, him and his team live-streamed one such investigation from Waverly Hills. At one point in the night, Chad decides to do some EVP sessions alone in a room where they had some personal experiences earlier. It wasn't long until the viewers watching live pointed out something odd. What appears to be a black orb-like shape can be seen moving down the hallway with incredible speed. Whatever it is so fast that Chad doesn't even notice it and goes on with his EVP session like nothing happened. Some could say that this is a bat, but the fact that Chad doesn't react to anything takes that option off the table for me, as there would be at least a little bit of sound if that were the case. Though that is just my opinion. I would love to know what you all think this could be.
The fourth floor shadows, known as one of the most haunted locations in Waverly Hills. The fourth floor holds a reputation that chills even the bravest of visitors. Those who enter are often struck by an oppressive atmosphere, thick and heavy with a sense of sorrow and unease. It's said that this floor was once the domain of countless patients battling tuberculosis, and perhaps that pain left a permanent mark. Visitors frequently catch glimpses of dark, shifting formed shadowy figures that seem almost alive in their movement. These shadow people are more than just fleeting shapes. They dart across the hallways, slide silently along the walls, or peek from doorways, as if they're still guarding these eerie corridors. Some of these figures appear to follow visitors as they make their way through, just at the edge of sight, vanishing in an instant when anyone dares to approach. Unseen voices and the humming nurse among the spectral inhabitants. One spirit has particularly touched the hearts of those who sense her presence. She is known only as the humming nurse. Believed to be a residual soul of one of the many nurses who tended to the patients here during the hospital's grim years. As tuberculosis ravaged the building, it was the nurses who were the frontline caregivers, witnessing the endless suffering. Many believe that this nurse's spirit has remained bound to these haunted halls, unable or unwilling to leave the place where she dedicated her life. Waverly Hills Sanatorium is more than just a haunted building. It's a symbol of a tragic past and a magnet for the supernatural. It represents both the medical breakthroughs and the suffering of the tuberculosis era. Today, Waverly Hills attracts thousands of visitors each year, all hoping to connect with its spirits, uncover its history, and walk the same halls where patients once clung to life. But today, through the ongoing efforts of the Waverly Hills Historical Society, the sanatorium's story is being carefully preserved and reinterpreted. No longer a place of despair, it's now a historical landmark, with its legends and ghostly tales carefully recounted for visitors from around the world. Their work not only honors the lives of those who suffered within its walls, but also brings fresh life to the old building, blending its haunted past with a new purpose. In this way, Waverly Hills is a reminder that even places touched by darkness can evolve, their legacy reshaped and remembered, ensuring that the stories of the past and the mysteries they left behind endure for generations to come.